Hello YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, with my Week 4 2015 NFL predictions. Again, before I start this video, guys, I'm still battling a little bit of my cold. Predominantly just a cough. It's gotten better over the week, so if I'm coughing a little bit, or a little intermittently throughout the video, sorry. So this week it's been a tremendous bounce back week. I am 12-3 this week so far with the Monday night game left to go, which is way better than the 8-7 record that I had last week. And overall, for the year now, I am 30-17, which equals up to about 64% of the games right through 3 weeks. That's really good for me. I'm really happy about that. I do have really big goals for this year. I would like to try to maintain that 64-65% range, maybe even get as high as 70%. You know, that's really asking a lot for a prognosticator like myself. But I hope I can continue this very high level of success for a good amount of weeks to get my percentage up. So I'd like to congratulate the Houston Texans, Philadelphia Eagles, and Seattle Seahawks for all getting their first win of the year over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, New York Jets, and Chicago Bears, respectively. There are still 4 teams that are fighting for a win in the New Orleans Saints, Baltimore Ravens, Detroit Lions, and Chicago Bears. And a few of those teams I think will still have a little bit to struggle, and I'm still surprised that my Ravens are still in that winless mix, but I'm going to get to that when I talk about all the games when I get into my picks. And congrats for the Atlanta Falcons, Cincinnati Bengals, Carolina Panthers, Patriots, Broncos. Let's see, I'm trying to think here. I might have forgotten another team, but and maybe possibly the Packers tonight. And again, I'm taking Green Bay over Kansas City tonight. So congrats for all those teams staying undefeated. And yeah, and for everybody out there, it's now bye season. Up until about Thanksgiving, everybody's going to start having byes, and this week's byes are the Tennessee Titans and the New England Patriots. So Marcus Mariota, Kendall Wright, Titans defense, Brady, Gronk, Edelman, Blunt, Patriots defense, Kostowski. If you have any of those players on any of your fantasy teams, mention them. So, time for my picks. This Thursday, when the 0-3 Baltimore Ravens go to the 2-1 Pittsburgh Steelers, I am taking the Pittsburgh Steelers. And on Sunday, when the 2-1 New York Jets go to the 1-2 Miami Dolphins in London, so this really isn't a home game for the Dolphins, I am taking the New York Jets. When the 2-1 Oakland Raiders go to the 0-3 Chicago Bears, I am taking the Oakland Raiders. When the 1-2 Houston Texans go to the 3-0 Atlanta Falcons, I am taking the Atlanta Falcons. When the 1-2 New York Giants go to the 2-1 Buffalo Bills, I am taking the Buffalo Bills. When the 1-2 Jacksonville Jaguars go to the 1-2 Indianapolis Colts, I am taking the Indianapolis Colts. When the 1-2 or 2-1 Kansas City Chiefs go to the 3-0 Cincinnati Bengals, I am taking the Cincinnati Bengals. When the 1-2 Philadelphia Eagles go to the 1-2 Washington Redskins, I am taking the Philadelphia Eagles. When the 3-0 Carolina Panthers go to the 1-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I am taking the Carolina Panthers. When the 1-2 Cleveland Browns go to the 1-2 San Diego Chargers, I am taking the San Diego Chargers. When the 2-1 or 3-0 Green Bay Packers go to the 1-2 San Francisco 49ers, I am taking the Green Bay Packers. When the 1-2 St. Louis Rams go to the 3-0 Arizona Cardinals, I am taking the Arizona Cardinals. When the 2-1 Minnesota Vikings go to the 3-0 Denver Broncos, I am taking the Denver Broncos. Sorry. And on Sunday night, when the 2-1 Dallas Cowboys go to the 0-3 New Orleans Saints, I am taking the Dallas Cowboys. And then on Monday night, When the 0-3 Detroit Lions go to the 1-2 Seattle Seahawks, I am taking the Seattle Seahawks. Okay, time for my thoughts. Baltimore at Pittsburgh. I am going to say something that might be very unpopular to all Ravens fans out there, including myself, but I truly believe in this theory right now in the NFL. The Baltimore Ravens are the biggest chokers in the NFL right now. And any Ravens fans that want to get angry at me for saying that, saying, why would you say such a negative comment about us? Well, let's look at our first 3 games. We had a shutdown defense play week 1 against the Denver Broncos, where for the first time in Peyton Manning's tenure as a Bronco, they didn't score an offensive touchdown. But we didn't score an offensive touchdown either, and we ended up losing 19-13. So let's jump to the next week. We go to Oakland. Our offense shows up finally, and we put up 33 points. But our defense turns into paper mache, and we give up 37 points to Derek Carr and the Raiders. So, the first 2 weeks we had a shutdown defense one week and a high-powered offense the next week. But the other half weren't there. So you go to yesterday, and it was like both halves showed up. We forced 2 turnovers by the Bengals, Andy Dalton's first interception of the year, and we had a sack strip fumble that went into the end zone, which was huge. And Joe Flacco threw for about 320 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick, even though he did throw it over 40 times, which I've never been a fan of, because when he throws it that often, that's not a good pace for us to win. Steve Smith catches 13 balls for around 180 yards, and we were able to take the lead twice in the fourth quarter, but we blow both leads because we give up 227 yards and a touchdown, 2 touchdowns to A.J. Green, and our defense, our offense gives up a 70-yard guard has a face mask penalty on the 4th and 5 conversion. So, to me, we still don't know what our identity is. We had one really good defensive game, one really good offensive game, and we had a mixed bag this week. So, and I look at Pittsburgh, and look, Pittsburgh was playing St. Louis at home, and that's an extremely tough place to play, and St. Louis has a phenomenal defense. Okay, even though there was a crazy start to the game, because the turf actually caught on fire. So the game was actually delayed. But I know the big thing that every Raven fan is kind of, excited about is that Big Ben, and I hope he does get better, suffered a grade 2 MCL sprain and a bone spur in his knee. So he'll be out, according to the NFL Network, between 4 to 6 weeks. Which means Michael Vick will get the start this Thursday. And again, he went 5 to 6 for 37 yards. So, the reason why I'm taking Pittsburgh is I'm just not sold on us. I know it's Michael Vick, and he's not at Ben Roethlisberger's level. Anyway, you could put prime Michael Vick in there, and he wouldn't be at Roethlisberger's level. But Michael Vick has qualities and a good enough arm, and a deep enough arm, to use the Pittsburgh playmakers. I think they're going to have a huge dose of Le'Veon Bell running and catching. And he had a bit of an average, Le'Veon type game. I think he had 70 yards on the ground. And Antonio Brown, he had another 100-yard game. And he's still leading the league in receiving. 490 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I just look at the vibe of Pittsburgh, and I think that Michael Vick, if he can learn this offense in time, and I know it's only about, they're off Monday, it's only 2 days. So, Baltimore, obviously has a chance to win this game because Michael Vick doesn't know this offense and hasn't played with the first teamers all year, and he only has to learn this offense in 2 days before they can play a game. But I just think that, again, they have enough talent that Michael Vick can work with, and they have enough of an offensive line that Le'Veon can run through us, and I'm just not sold on the Ravens being able to get a stop, even with Michael Vick at quarterback. Because Michael Vick, he showed a couple flashes with the Jets last year. Remember, he had a big game against Pittsburgh, ironically, where they beat Pittsburgh 26-10 with the Jets offense, and the Steelers offense is way more talent than that Jets offense did. So again, I'm taking Pittsburgh. They're at home. And I'm just not sold on the Ravens. I think maybe Oh, you're giving up way too early? Well, just look at the last 3 games. I think Michael Vick, he's going to struggle, and he might, especially against us, he doesn't really play that well. Excuse me. He hasn't really played us that often. But I think that he has enough talent around him, and our secondary is so bad that I think Antonio Brown and Wheaton and Hayward Bay and Miller, they all could find holes in our secondary. Because remember the last time we played them, we gave up 6 touchdowns and got blown out 49 to 23. So, again, I'm taking Pittsburgh in this game just because I'm just not trusting in the Ravens to be able to pull this off in a short week. Most of our guys that were hurt, like Eugene Monroe, Brashad Perryman, Chris Candy, I think they'll all be out again. It's only a 4-day week. So, but again, the game should be competitive. Would I be surprised if the Ravens win? No, not at all. But I'm just taking Pittsburgh just because I do not trust how this Ravens team is playing. And I'll say it one last time before I end this pick. I think we are the biggest choke artist in the NFL this year so far. The biggest chokers. And anybody who wants to debate that, feel free to. In the comment section. In the comment section. Alright, next game. I'm taking the Jets over the Dolphins just because the Jets, they played like the Jets. Just when you had faith in them that they could maybe have a decent string of wins together, Ryan Fitzpatrick ends up playing like Ryan Fitzpatrick. He throws for about 290 yards. He throws it for 58 times, and he throws 3 interceptions. And the Jets' offense looked anemic. They really missed Eric Decker. Brandon Marshall had a horrific lateral attempt where he tried to throw it backwards to the guy behind him, but that was just a stupid idea in the first place. And the Jets just looked very anemic and just very unlifelike like they had the last time. They turned the ball over 4 times themselves, where over the last 2 weeks they caused 10 turnovers in the last 2 games. So the turnovers have kind of flipped the tables, and I think that was the biggest reason why the Eagles beat the Jets. But I'll get to that. I'll talk more about the Eagles. I'll talk about the Eagles-Redskins game. But after seeing that Miami game, where Tyrod Taylor and that Bills defense just had a field day with Ryan Tannehill in that offense, and I really think Dolphins fans now, after the first 3 weeks, have kind of really felt that maybe paying Ryan Tannehill that $96 million extension was one of the worst ideas, one of the worst decisions they'd had in recent history. But I'm just looking at the Dolphins and going, if Revis can play, even though he pulled a hamstring, if Revis can cover Landry, and Cromartie can cover the other guy, the Jets' front 7 should be able to get through this Dolphins offensive line. Most defenses have been able to get through this Dolphins offensive line this year. And I think they just lost one of their guards, Jenkins. And Pouncey left of an injury, I think. I don't know if he came back. But I'm just not sold on this Miami offense. The Jets still have more of an offense than Miami does. And also the Jets have a decent running game, enough, I think, because Chris Ivory played. Eric Decker's supposed to come back. So I think the Jets just have enough talent. Even if Fitzpatrick screws up once or twice, I think Tannehill could screw up once or twice himself. So that cancels out, basically. So to me, when I look at this game, could the Dolphins win this? Yeah, they could. They won in Week 4 in Miami last year. They beat the Raiders. I'm sorry. That was week. Yeah, that was Week 4. Yeah, they beat the Raiders. But this is the Jets team that's way more talented. I think the Jets are gonna have a true test for the first time to face adversity, and I think they'll be able to stand up to the challenge because Miami just looks like one of the most overrated and overhyped teams that anybody had ever talked about this year. Because Ndamukong Suh looks hidden. He really hasn't made an impact at all, and that's your $100 million man. Yeah, they gave up 112 yards rushing and a touchdown to Carlos Williams, not even McCoy. So when you have Ivory and Powell, I'm not saying they're better than McCoy and Williams, but the Jets just still have enough talent. And even if Fitzpatrick screws up and plays as bad as Ryan Fitzpatrick can play, I think Ryan Tannehill can throw a couple interceptions, and that can cancel out enough for the Jets to win this game. So, yeah, that's why I'm taking the Jets over the Dolphins. Just basically because I think the Jets just have still a better secondary. They have a better front 7, and they just have more talent because if Decker comes back, along with Marshall, I think Fitzpatrick can win this game. And also, it's really not at home. It's in London, and Miami and London are two completely different places, so there's really not going to be that much of a home field advantage for the Dolphins to have. So that's what I'm taking the Jets over the Dolphins. Raiders over Bears. The Oakland Raiders, amazingly, I think for the first time in a long time, for the first 4 weeks, will have 2 games above 500. I can't even remember the last time they've done that since 2002, I think. But I look at Oakland and I see Derek Carr, who's playing really efficient football. He's, getting a lot of, he's making a lot of good decisions, getting a lot of everybody, involved in the game. Latavius Murray got 108 yards rushing and a touchdown, which was impressive. Charles Woodson still, at 38 years old, still making plays like he's 28. That game-winning interception was one of his better interceptions and maybe one of the best I had seen at his age. But I just also look at Chicago and go, Jay Cutler should be out again. And Jeffrey's still battling with a hamstring injury, so you don't know if he's going to come back. Kevin White's not going to be there. Oakland pretty much kind of halted Cleveland's running game, who had a monster game the week against Tennessee. And they can just shut down Forte, and they have the guys to do it with Mack and Tuck and Malcolm Smith and their other linebackers. I think the Raiders have enough to win this game because Jimmy Clausen, if he starts again, has no points led by this Bears offense. Was I surprised by that with Seattle? No way. Just because Seattle was motivated, they were at home, and there was just no way I thought that they could get anything. So I don't think that the Bears will get shut out this week. So Bears fans, I don't think that would be possible. But just with the lack of talent that you have, if you just stop at Forte, you've basically won the game. Because I don't think Jimmy Clausen, with the weapons he has, even if he has Jeffrey, can do enough to beat this Oakland team, which has been on a roll. And I really feel happy for Raiders fans. There's some optimism, and I think that finally you're seeing the pieces. You finally have a quarterback that I'm starting to like each and more every week, that he's developing and getting better as the games go on. And, the reason why I'm taking the Raiders one last time, the Raiders just have way more talent around them, and they've been playing more consistent football than what the Bears have going for them with their talent and what they've been playing. So that's how I'm taking the Raiders to beat the Bears. Atlanta over Houston. I could not believe the Houston Texans won that game because that was about just pretty much an even crapshoot for both teams. And just a quick little side note on Tampa. Please cut your kicker. Because Brenda, I don't know, but the Tampa Bay kicker, he makes a 56-yard field goal to begin the game. And then he misses a 41-yarder and a 33-yarder later in the game to lose the game. Do I think Houston could have still done what they did? Yeah, they could have. But I think the game would have changed completely if those 6 points were added on the board and they were up 15-10. Because at least at that point, the Bucs could have gone, hey, the Texans scored a touchdown. Even if they get the 2-point conversion, we can still win on a field goal. Instead of, oh, we missed both kicks and they score, and then they end up losing by 10. So, Tampa, please cut your kicker, because that's just embarrassing. But when I look at this game, Houston just kind of survived. Mallet made some decent throws, but he also threw an interception. He had a fumble. And I'm looking at this Atlanta team, which Dan Quinn has done a phenomenal job with rebuilding this team. Because to come back from an 11-point deficit at the half and then shut out the Dallas Cowboys the whole second half and go on a 22-0 run, that's impressive. And they're the first team in NFL history to go 3-0 despite being down in all of the in every fourth quarter of those 3 games. That's very impressive, and I've been very impressed with what Dan Quinn's done with that squad. So when I look at Atlanta in this game, they're at home. They're starting to get that home energy going. Atlanta just has a lot more talent. Devontae Freeman had a monster game against that Dallas defensive line. I think he ran for about 130, 140 yards and 3 touchdowns. I don't know if he can repeat that again with this Houston front, but I'm just not sold on Ryan Mallett going against this Atlanta defense. And Matt Ryan just has way more talent to work with on offense with Julio and Roddy. Julio's having a Pro Bowl, All-Pro type year. This is what he does, and I think you could argue right now he is the best wide receiver, maybe him and Antonio Brown, in the game today with what they've been doing. But I look at this game, Atlanta's on a roll. This Houston team's been struggling. They barely got a win over Tampa. And I think that Houston's corners, they can't handle Julio or Roddy. Foster could play, and that'll be a huge boost, but I don't think that'll be enough. They get Arian. The Texans could get Foster back and Dwayne Brown, but I just don't think that's enough of a boost to take on this Atlanta team who's firing on all cylinders. They're at the highest level of confidence. They're at home, and I'm just not sold on Ryan Mallett being able to beat this Atlanta team the way they've been playing right now with this high-powered offense and this consistent defense. Atlanta's defense isn't great, but it's a lot better than what it was last year, and that's good enough for this offense to take over. So that's what I'm taking to the Atlanta Falcons to beat the Houston Texans. Bills over Giants. The Buffalo Bills looked incredibly impressive against the Miami Dolphins. They really kind of overshadowed, or they really exposed maybe how overrated the Miami Dolphins are. Because when you get Ryan Tannehill throwing 3 interceptions before the first half, Carlos Williams runs for 112 yards. He's got 3 touchdowns in 3 games. Good for him. You got Tyrod Taylor, who's the first quarterback since Jim Kelly to have about 70% completion through his first 3 games as a Bill. Very impressive. Tyrod looks, like a guy that can be a consistent quarterback presence, which is what Buffalo's needed all along. And it's in Buffalo. This is a Super Bowl rematch, so I think Rex would tell those guys, hey, this Giants team back in 1990, the famous wide right game, is trying to beat us again. I know that's idiotic because again most of those guys were kids or not even around, or weren't even around in 1990 when that game happened. But what I'm saying is I think he'll use that for motivation. I look at the Giants, and they finally got a win. Kudos to them. Oh yeah, I guess kudos to the Giants as well for getting a win. And Eli Manning still hasn't thrown an interception, and they said that that's the longest time he's gone out. These first whole 3 games. I think almost 100 pass attempts without an interception, which is a record for him, so kudos to him. But I look at this Giants team and say, if Sammy Watkins doesn't play, that's huge. He left the game yesterday with a calf injury, and if he doesn't play, that's a huge help. But I just think that the Buffalo defense going up against that Giant offensive line, which has been shaky at best at times this year, they'll be able to rip through it and get to Eli. And I think Eli, his interception, his throw streak, about an interception streak, will end in Buffalo. And I think Tyrod Taylor, with his mobility, especially against the corners that the Giants have, I think he can make some plays with his feet. I think Shady McCoy can get a decent running game going. And I just trust Buffalo's whole team right now better than I do the Giants. Even though, again, the Giants have played a really good stretch of football these first 3 games. They've just had some bad breaks. I just think, again, it's going to be kind of one of those things, again, where I don't think they're going to have that situation. I just think Buffalo's defense can shut down this offense enough, especially with Victor Cruz. If he doesn't play, that really helps because it's like, okay, the Bills just have to worry about Odell Beckham, and the Giants just have to worry about Harvin. And you could say, Odell's better than Percy, which I'll admit. But I'm taking the Bills just because I trust them at home. They've looked really good at home 2 of these first 3 weeks. And the Giants, I just think their offensive line, even though they held up for the first time all year against the Skins, I don't think they'll be able to hold up against the Bills, and that'll be the difference. So that's what I'm thinking, the Bills to beat the Giants. Indy over Jacksonville. Jacksonville played like Jacksonville against New England. It was competitive, a little bit competitive through the first half, but then New England decided to just stop everything and just, blow them out of the water. And they won 51 to 14. 51 to, I think 14 or 51 to 17. Where Indy, Andrew Luck threw another 2 interceptions, so that's now 8 turnovers through the first 3 weeks, which I think still is leading the NFL. But at the same time, he was able to fight back from those and get 2 big fourth quarter touchdowns to get a 35-33 win over the Tennessee Titans. I look at this game and I'll say this. I think Jacksonville, for the first time in a while, can actually compete against Indy just because of how shaky Indianapolis has been. And especially with how Tennessee's defense, I think Jacksonville's defense is way more talented than Indy's. Schematically. I think Blake, he can make some throws. He's got enough talent. Allen Hurns can make some plays. Allen Hurns can make some plays. Allen Robinson can make some plays. They might get Thomas back this week. They might. You're not exactly sure. But at the end of the day, it's kind of just like the Tennessee game. They have won 13 straight games against the division. I think this will make this 14. I think Jacksonville this will be one of the more competitive games Jacksonville has had against Indy in a long time. But with them at home, with Andrew Luck in that offense, getting back on track against the Titans for the most part, they put up 35 points. I think that's enough that, again, Jacksonville can maybe put up 28, 29 themselves, but I think Indy can outshoot them and win this game off of that. I think Indy needs to be able to shut down Jacksonville. Again, that's not really a lot of confidence because Jacksonville's offense is really not that effective. But just for Indy's confidence, the fact that they've lost 2 games the way they did, and the fact they needed a blown 2-point conversion attempt to beat the Titans, they just need some confidence to say, hey, our defense can play like a Chuck Pagano defense can play. And, so that's why I'm taking Indy to beat Jacksonville. Cincinnati over Kansas City. Cincinnati is 14-2-1 at home over the last 17 games. And I think that Cincinnati, they have all their pieces together, finally, for a long time. Nobody's really gotten hurt there, even though Tyler Eifert went out of the game. Tyler Eifert was out of the game yesterday against the Ravens at the end. But I look at Cincinnati and say this. They have the one thing that Kansas City does not have. It's wide receivers. That's my biggest thing. You can look at the defenses. If you give me those 2 front sevens, you could pretty much call that a crapshoot. Secondaries, even though they will have Sean Smith back this game, because remember he's serving a 3-game suspension off a DUI, so he's going to miss the Green Bay game. And he'll be back for Cincinnati. So if you put Peters and Smith there against Hall and Pac-Man Jones, again, that's about an even crapshoot. So the defense is about equal. I'll give them the running game advantage because Jamal Charles is better than Hill and Bernard combined. But Kansas City is going on a 20-game streak right now where they still haven't thrown a touchdown to a wide receiver, which I think will continue tonight. So that'll be 21 games, where A.J. Green and Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu, that's just a better receiving core to work with than what Kansas City has. Because again, if they double team Jeremy Maclin, they pretty much have the receiver core figured out besides Travis Kelce. And I don't think Travis Kelce is Gronk, and he can't dominate a game like that, even though, again, people have called him, Von Miller called him a couple weeks ago, fake Gronk. But, again, I think Cincinnati's at home. They just have better receivers. I think that's the difference. If Alex Smith and an A.J. Green to throw to instead of a Jerry Maclin or Marvin Jones or a Sanu instead of a Wilson and, they let go of Dwayne Bowe. And I really can't think of any other wide receiver Kansas City has. And I think I might have taken Kansas City. But with the fact that Cincinnati's on a roll, they have just more wide receiver talent, and everything else is about a crapshoot. I'm going to take the Bengals just because, again, they're at home, and they have the better wide receiving core, which is going to be the difference in this game. So that's what I'm taking the Bengals over the Chiefs. Eagles over Redskins. I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles to beat the Washington Redskins just based on the sole fact of the Washington Redskins. Kirk Cousins, just when I put some faith in him, let me down and play like Kirk Cousins usually does. He had 2 horrible interceptions. And I have to tell you, Jay Gruden, and to any Redskins fans out there, if he screws up again and he does another 2 interceptions, you really need to think about putting Colt McCoy in next week. Because Jay Gruden can't keep losing games like that with turnover after turnover after turnover. Because Jay Gruden's fighting for his job. If they have another losing season due to his decision, he will get fired. And I just think, again, Philadelphia, and I'm going to make a little point on this. Congratulations for getting your first win. The defense played phenomenal. They intercepted Fitzpatrick 3 times. They got 4 turnovers altogether. The running game, and I am going to say this, I think that you should start Ryan Matthews over DeMarco Murray. You might say, well, that's insane. We just paid DeMarco Murray $42 million. Yeah, I know. But he has, right now, in that start, he has 98 more rushing yards than DeMarco Murray does. He was able to find creases and make cuts and find holes way quicker and way more decisive than DeMarco had, in the last 2 games. And also, just a quick thing, on Bradford. Everybody's, there's some guys that I looked at with Philadelphia, the Philadelphia fans, and they're saying that, let's give Sam Bradford some credit. You know what? Sam Bradford deserves about 10 to 15% of the credit. Because that was a defensive and special teams type game. If Darren Sproles doesn't get that kick return, that would be about an even game at that point. That would be 17-17, and you don't know what happens. But Sam Bradford completed a grand total of 50% of his passes. 50%! Okay? And he had only 3 more passing yards than rushing. Than what Ryan Matthews had rushing. Okay? You know what that reminds me of? 2012. When Christian Ponder was the quarterback of the Vikings. There were 5 games where Adrian Peterson outran Christian Ponder throwing. Okay? So I'm not saying that Bradford is as bad as Christian Ponder. I'm just saying that, again, when you throw for a grand total of 50%, and, people could say, and there's a guy, the people out there going, give Sam Bradford a credit, the offensive line, dropping, wide receivers who drop balls. You know what? Wide receivers drop balls in every game. You know what? Make and tip balls to the interceptions. Sam Bradford played a weak game manager type game. And I still think that he needs to prove a lot to Philadelphia that he is a franchise quarterback. Because you could have got anybody. Christian Ponder, I think if he would have done that same thing, could have won that game. Brandon Weeden could have won that game. A lot of managing quarterbacks could throw for a grand total of 50% of his passes and throw for 112 yards and a touchdown. Which was a nice play, by the way, to Matthews beating Davis up the sideline. So, and I'll just mention this guy, Josh P. He's a big Philadelphia person. Shout out to him. Go watch his stuff for all Philadelphia fans. And he keeps trying to give Bradford passes. But all I'm saying to him is, and maybe to anybody else out there that defends Sam Bradford, because I will admit I'm not the biggest Sam Bradford fan, that he deserves credit for being out there and winning the game. But when you look at how the game went on, to me, he deserves about 10 to 15% of the credit. And, you could say, like he said, or like Josh said, oh, well, he was playing the lead, he's playing one of the best secondaries, and he didn't turn it over. Yeah, good for him. But when you just throw about 5 yards down the field at, 1 point for most of the game, yeah, you're not going to get that many opportunities. And there were at least 2 or 3 opportunities where Bradford could have got picked. Could have. but didn't happen. So Josh, if you watch this video, everybody that knows him, and you watch this video, you're welcome for the shout out there, and best of luck to your Eagles this week against the Redskins. But again, just to get back on point, sorry for that aside, I'm going to take the Eagles to win this game just because, again, the Redskins might have just as good a talent as the Eagles do. The biggest difference is they have Kirk Cousins, who can play what like Ryan Fitzpatrick played. That's the thing. I just think, again, I'm not sold on Kirk Cousins. Just when I put faith in him, he let me down. You might say this is a bit of a spite, but I think that he can throw another 2 or 3 interceptions that gives the Eagles more opportunities to get down the field and score. Again, getting Deshaun Jackson back is huge, but also D'Angelo Hall, their number 1 corner, he's out for 3 to 4 weeks with a sprained toe. So again, I think this game could be very competitive. You got 2, struggling teams with quarterback issues, 2 running games that have proven to be solid some weeks, and pathetic others. So this is a very evenly matched out. And can the Redskins win this game? They could if Cousins doesn't turn it over. But I don't expect it to happen with this defense. And that's why I'm taking the Eagles to beat the Redskins. Carolina over Tampa. I am going to say this right now. Any Panthers fans that might want to get angry at me about this, oh well. Carolina, I think to me, is the most overrated, undefeated team out there. Okay? Because if you look at who they played the Blake Bortles-led Jaguars, the Mallett-led Texans, and the Luke McCown-led Saints. Not very impressive of offenses ran. I'm not trying to take anything away from Carolina. You're winning these games, which is great. You need to win these games because if you were to lose these games, you would be in a much bigger issue because that's that's almost the flip side of like, how could you lose to those teams? It was kind of like Baltimore-esque. But kudos to Carolina though. Cam Newton had another great game, 20 of 31, 310 yards, 2 TDs. Greg Olsen had a monster game, like he can have. And there was something interesting that I wanted to mention real quick. There was a play where in the game I think where Cam wanted a flag for unnecessary roughness, and then Ed Hockley, one of the more respected refs in the league and one of the more senior refs, literally told Cam he's not old enough yet to get that call. Or something where he's not old enough, or he's not good enough to get that call. Which really kind of surprised me, because that's, for a lot of people out there that are skeptics, that's, a bit of fire there that he would say that. Because you would think, well, you favor certain quarterbacks? It's like, really? It's like, you're not old enough, you're not good enough to get that call? Aren't, all quarterbacks, at the end of the day? True, they're different skill sets. But I just thought that was very interesting, and, look up it, for anybody out there that watches this video, look up his press conference, and then you'll understand what I'm talking about. But, to get back to the game, Carolina and Tampa, again, this is something where Carolina last year, with Derek Anderson, was able to beat the Bucs with Josh McCown. I'm not saying Winston looks like he has a little bit more potential than McCown, but, again, this is Tampa. Carolina has enough talent around them with Cam and this offense, and Jameis Winston's rookie tendencies of throwing interceptions. He threw a horrible one to Boyer yesterday. I think the Panthers just have enough talent, again, to beat a Bucs team that they should beat. Just because Tampa's still struggling with, their whole team perspective. Again, I think it can be a competitive game. Carolina's been in competitive games all year. But just again, I think Carolina just has a little bit more talent to get their 4th straight win and to go into their bye at 4-0. So, again, I think that for Panthers fans, I'm going to say this one more time, I think you guys are the most overrated 3-0 team. It's just because of the schedule you've had. I'm not taking anything away from how Cam's played and the defense played because, again, you haven't had Luke Kuechly for the last 2 weeks. And hopefully he can come back this week. But when you play Blake Bortles and the Jags, Mallett and the Texans, and McCown and the Saints, that's not a murderer's row. That's just pretty much, well, you should have won those games. So, Good job. Good job, though. But I'm going to take you guys again. Keep rolling with the Panther train. The 3-0 so far. I'm going to go for 4. So that's what I think of the Panthers to beat the Bucks. San Diego over Cleveland. San Diego just looked absolutely steamrolled by the Vikings. And that was a very decisive win by the Vikings, 31-17. Phillip Rivers threw a horrible pick 6. The offensive line really couldn't get anything going. Rivers got sacked about 4 times. Adrian Peterson ran for 128 yards on him, so he had another monster game against him. That was the same team he broke the record against of 297 yards back in 2007. But I'm going to take San Diego in this one because they're at home, and they played a lot better at home than they usually do on the road. And Cleveland just looks, with McCown, just in bad shape. They really couldn't have any offense going. They were down by about 13 or 17 points at one point during the game. Or they were down by about 21 points against Oakland. And they made a little bit of a comeback, but again, kudos to Charles Woodson for making a phenomenal play. Josh McCown threw the game-losing interception and cost the Browns, a chance to tie the game against the Raiders. And again, just for all Browns fans, 1 for Johnny, 0 for McCown. So, how much longer are you going to let Josh McCown have this ship? I didn't hear anything from Mike Benton that says, we're going to make a quarterback change. Mike, best of luck in your future endeavors once you get fired this year. But I think San Diego, you have Rivers in this offense against Cleveland in that offense. And again, just like I said last time, it's another kind of issue. San Diego's facing a tougher challenge with the Cleveland defense, but Rivers just has way more talent around him to be effective than McCown does with his squad. And kudos, quick thing to the McCowns. First time in about, like they said, 8 years that both McCowns started games. So good for the both of them. Could Cleveland put up a fight? They could. They could cause a turnover. They can get pressure on, Rivers, and he can get sacked, and he might fumble, or he might throw a bad interception. But I'm going to take San Diego at home. They just have way too much offensive talent that I think that Rivers will do a better job against Cleveland's defense than what Cleveland will do against San Diego's defense. And by the way, Browns fans, how does it feel to have Dwayne Bowe on your roster for, $9 million guaranteed, and he was a healthy scratch? I said this in my Facebook group, which I'm going to put a link in again for everybody out there that wants to join. That Dwayne Bowe is making the easiest $9 million of his life by just sitting on the bench for the Browns. Unbelievable that they're just inactive. They're just making him inactive. Unbelievable. But again, that's a Cleveland type move. So again, that's what I'm taking the Chargers to beat the Browns. Green Bay over San Francisco. This was easy. San Francisco just looked like utter vagabonds. They didn't even look like they belonged on the same field as the Cardinals, and they didn't. Kaepernick threw 2 pick sixes in the first quarter. He threw 4 interceptions overall. He only threw for about 97 yards. And it's just like I'm looking at Green Bay and going, I think San Francisco's won the last 3 against them, and I know they won the last one in San Francisco. But this San Francisco 49ers team is way different than what it was before. And Green Bay, they're motivated, excuse me. Like I said, guys, I'm still battling my cough. Green Bay's motivated to win this game because they want to get that monkey off their back, and they just have way too much talent. And Aaron Rodgers will light up this Niners defense, and Kaepernick might throw another 2 interceptions to the Packers that'll give Rodgers even more opportunities. This really isn't even fair, just because of how both squads have played. Yeah. So again, just Green Bay just has way more talent, and the Niners look like they're reeling. This is a horrible time for Aaron Rodgers to come into town to just maybe even bury them even more. So that's what taking the Packers to beat the Niners. Cardinals or the Rams? Cardinals are very underappreciated to me, I think. How dominant they've been over the last 3 weeks. 12-point win over New Orleans, followed by blowouts of San Francisco and Chicago. I think you could say, well, it's San Francisco and Chicago. Not really impressive. But Arizona's playing a St. Louis team that scored a grand total of 6 points. They've scored a grand total of 16 points with this offense led by Nick Foles in the last 2 games. That's really good, Jeff, for picking him up. Especially when you didn't have Ben in there working with that offense. So, again, I just think, again, this is in Arizona. Last time St. Louis was in Arizona, Palmer towards ACL. So, hopefully that doesn't happen again. Knock on wood for all Cardinals fans. But I look at Arizona and just say they just have way too much talent. They're firing on way too many cylinders. And I think Nick Foles, if he can get picked off by Will Allen to lose a game, he definitely can lose this game with Patrick Peterson, Bethel, Johnson, and Matthew in the no-fly zone for the Cardinals. And he might have a Kaepernick-type game against this secondary. So, again, I don't even think it's going to be close. Again, for my locks for the week, I'm going to take Green Bay, Arizona, and Carolina as my locks for the week. And, yeah, I just think Arizona is just way too more talented all around than what the than what the Rams have. And kudos to Chris Johnson, by the way, for running for 110 yards and 2 TDs. He's looking like, the 08-09 type Johnson. And he's he's doing well enough that, especially when they get Mikey Potty back, that running game can be good enough that they can win this NFC West and they can beat the Seahawks for this division. I really think they can, if they all stay healthy. But that's what I'm taking the Cardinals to beat the Rams. Broncos over the Vikings. The Vikings have looked really good at home. They've dominated the Lions and the Chargers. 2 solid teams from last year. But this is Denver. Minnesota. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater, and he threw a horrible interception yesterday against the Chargers. He might throw 1 or 2 against this Broncos secondary and this defense the way it's been playing. Peyton will be able to get through the Minnesota Vikings secondary. I think, again, C.J. Anderson going down. He only had about 19 yards rushing. That's not good. But I think Denver, I think Demarius going up against Wood or Rhodes, and Wayne's going up against and Newman going up against Sanders. I think that's advantage Denver. And I just think that, again, Minnesota has always been better at home than on the road. Denver looks like they're getting into Super Bowl form. And I believe that Denver just has too much talent that the Minnesota Vikings can't overcome, even with Adrian Peterson. So that's what I'm thinking, the Broncos to beat the Vikings. Cowboys over Saints. My God, what a toilet bowl matchup this is. Brandon Whedon versus Luke McCown. Unbelievable that these two guys on a primetime game would be the starting quarterbacks for the Dallas Cowboys and New Orleans Saints, respectively. But I'm taking Dallas just because Dallas looked really good compared to New Orleans. New Orleans gave up too many yards on the ground again, and that's what Dallas did really effectively yesterday. They ran for 4 touchdowns. And Randall had about, 100 yards. McFadden had about 30 yards. And I just think, again, Brandon Whedon is a better quarterback than Luke McCown. I can't believe I just said that, but at least Brandon Whedon, has 5 wins and McCown has 2. Again, so this quarterback matchup, it's awful for, quarterback marquee. That's awful, Whedon and McCown. But here's the thing that I'm going to take away from this. The Saints have just looked pathetic the whole year so far. I think this. I think that the Cowboys are riding a 10-game road winning streak. The Saints are riding a 6-game home losing streak. So one of those is going to have to end, and I'm going to take the first one. I think the Cowboys, or the second one rather, I'm sorry. I think the Saints are going to continue to lose at home to this Brandon Whedon-led Cowboy team, just because I think they have an offensive line that's going to push the Saints defense away and allow McFadden to run through the holes that they have. And I think Whedon has just a little bit more talent with Williams, Escobar, Witten, and their other guys compared to what New Orleans has. Because besides Brandon Cooks, they really have nobody to throw to. And if you have Luke McCown throwing them the ball, I take Whedon over McCown. So I think two streaks are going to end. Or one streak's going to continue and one streak's going to end. Brandon Whedon will finally win a game because he has the longest active losing streak out of anybody in the NFL with 9 straight losses. That's going to end. And I think the Saints' home losing streak will continue and they'll drop 7 straight home games. So, again, this game, could the Saints win? Yeah, Luke McCown could maybe outshine Whedon. And ironically, they both had about the same kind of game. Whedon completed 13 of his first 14 passes, and McCown completed 16 of his first 17 passes. But at the end of the day, both of them lost. So, again, I'm taking Dallas, the better offensive line. I think they have the better quarterback, and the defenses are about equal. To me, the Saints really haven't had Bird or Keenan, and they might not be around for another week. And I just have more confidence in Dallas if they played against Atlanta than what I did, than what I've seen out of the Saints the whole year. So that's what I'm making the Cowboys to beat the Saints. And finally, the Monday night game, Seattle over Detroit. I really wasn't impressed with Seattle's offense. They kicked 4 field goals and had a return touchdown. And Russell Wilson only threw for 1 touchdown. True, they shut out the Bears, but again, it was a Jimmy Clausen-led team. What a shock. But I look at the Seattle team and go, okay, Detroit's reeling. Matthew Stafford had 3 more turnovers. And they just look like they can't get anything going. And I mean, again, I think Matthew Stafford going into Seattle, a place where, and by the way, Matthew Stafford's 3-31 all time against teams that have had winning records the previous year. So I'm going to use that stat very hard in this decision. But I think, again, Seattle's defense, they're going against way more talent. Okay? They're going with way better talent in Calvin and Gold. Sherm and Carey are going to have to cover. But I think, and Brandon Mebane also with a groin injury. I think that the Seahawks just have enough offensive firepower. Hopefully Marshawn Lynch, who had a calf injury and now has a hamstring injury, can come back for the Monday night's game. He should be able to play. I think he will. But I just think the Seahawks have too much talent defensively. And just with Matthew Stafford's tendencies in Seattle, that they can win another defensive, close, tight game. Again, I think Stafford, Stafford make throws to Megatron, he could. Could Stafford use Golden Tate? He could. But at the end of the day, I think Seattle's defense, along with their offense, which I think starting to gel a little bit, if they can continue to gel against this Lions secondary, which looked pretty bad against Denver's offense, I think Seattle will get this win. So, those are my thoughts for this week. Like, comment, rate, subscribe. Everybody out there again for the second week, I'm going to put the NFL YouTube prognosticators page down in my link. If anybody wants to join, please do. We're a great group of guys that love talking about the game. Shout-outs to Gio Knows, Poetic Kid Mikey, Billy B, Bridgewater's Finest, Christina Olney, Philadelphia, Keith Bailey, Gavin O'Connor, the Football Guru, and everybody out there. Let's all have another good week this week, and that's it. So, best of luck to all the players, teams, coaches, fellow fantasy players. Again, the Titans and Patriots on a bye, so don't start anybody there. And all fellow prognosticators. And until next week, this is Matthew and Fanatic signing off. Till then, so long.